me a finger when or two fingers when there's 2 minutes left. I don't want to overstay my welcome. What was that? Absolutely. Um, Let me get in here. So, so, when thinking about what I wanted to chat with you guys, there was a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. First, I wanted to reintroduce myself. It's been a while. Sometimes we all need a reintroduction to even the most familiar faces that know us, love us, and trust us. And secondly, how many of you have heard about the lawsuits that have been happening in the real estate industry? If you have, that's awesome. If you haven't, you must have been under a rock. I'm kidding, but that's okay. That's okay. That's why you have me to lean upon, and I call that job security. So a little bit about my reintroduction, my history. Um, Basically, I have 15 years of retail banking experience. I've led teams inside banks on various aspects of growth. To me, I've worked between all these different institutions, had an amazing time, learned a lot. And that is where I actually fell in love with real estate. While working at banks, I've been a top producer for many years and took pride in that, in customer service, sales, needs, etc. My first investment property, I was able to fortunately purchase 10 years ago. So thankfully, I'm still on that trajectory. I'm not where I want to be. My goal and ambitions are a lot higher and bigger. Anytime you want to ask about them, feel free to reach out. We could sit down and chit chat. As far as real estate, I've been helping and advocating for others over 5 years. Nothing brings me more pleasure besides my kids, family, but when a client their hands is held, they feel safe. They feel secure knowing that what their steps are doing is empowering themselves. And at any time, they are the ones that are making various decisions, what are best for them and their family. And what I found in the last 5 and change years is that people want transparency, people want accountability, and they want to know what to expect, but really they want to be held. They want to be cuddled, and they needed support throughout yes. And as funny as it sounds, typically folks don't buy homes that often, and they need to be reassured that this is a good step to take. Or it may not be a good step to take, but if they still want to continue with that step, they are entitled to do so. Any questions before I move on to some different topic? Nope. Awesome. Come on. There we go. So the case basically is called Sitzer Burnett. In this case, there's a lot of legal stuff that is far beyond my comprehension. I don't want to read it, understand it. It doesn't apply to me and where I play. But where I do play, there are two main factors that are very, very crucial, that are changes that were originally supposed to come in July are now being implemented sometime in August of this year, perhaps even a little bit later. Those two factors are buyer representation, meaning defining a realtor and a buyer where that relationship is, because we always know between a realtor and a seller what that relationship looks like, but we as a consumer have a hard time to grasp. And secondly, decoupling the compensation. So as a seller of a real estate, as an agent, I would go negotiate my commission with the seller, whatever that commission is, and then I would pay either a half or whatever proportion I wanted to the agent that brings us the strongest buyer. That was the before. Unfortunately, consumers were not aware that you didn't have to pay a buyer's agent before. It wasn't aware. But again, was an option. It will continue to be an option. You don't have to. So, but this regulation decouples that officially. What's going to happen is, so that's just the hair. Before, as of today, if you look on a third-party website, you'll see all the way in the bottom the compensation an agent who brings in a buyer makes. Everyone seen that occasionally? So come this change, it's because it's decoupling, separating, that will no longer, you will not be able to see that going forward. There will be no compensation. They may perhaps be a concession, which is not disclosed. This is a conversation between an agent and a seller. Well, what are the concessions? Why is that important? And here's what I'll tell you. My job as a realtor is advocate for my sellers or any client. But if a buyer has been scrambling and saving for a year or 2 or 3 or 4, and now they also have to pay for a commission on a buyer's agent, are they more likely to submit an offer or less likely to submit an offer on a house when a buyer wants a house? Because there's no compensation for the buyer's agent. So they're less likely. So we're looking at the sellers now. We're going to say, seller, we have now 2 maybe interested parties. If we're not compensating for the buyer's agent, taking account for that as a concession, it doesn't make sense to still consider that, because otherwise we may have 4 or 5 offers and now increase, thank you for the heads up, and now increase the value of all the offers. So there's a lot of conversations that you and your agents can have. Very important. Everything is always negotiable. Just because one person doesn't want to negotiate with you, that's entirely up to them. Another person doesn't want to negotiate with you, that's entirely up to them. Just because they all seem to have the same cost structure, it's just a coincidence. Or is it? And that's really what some people thought. This was not a coincidence, and that's why there were lawsuits. Because most people have seen 6%. 6% this guy, that gal, this guy, that gal. And because of all that, because no one was negotiating, or perhaps maybe the sellers didn't even interview other people, they just went with the first one. So very, very interesting. But buyer representation, very important. Next time when you go into a house with a realtor, you're going to have a buyer's contract. That is what this stated. This regulation stated. So what does that mean? A buyer contract could be a month, could be a year, it could be 6 months, it could be a week. But in that contract, it states the buyer's compensation. Now you as a consumer have to negotiate with those realtors on the buyer's side as to what your strategy is going to be as far as buyer's agent's compensation. Again, just because someone isn't willing to negotiate, that's on them. There will be a lot of changes coming in the near future. I'm excited for those changes because there's transparency, accountability, and everyone always knows where they stand and what to expect. If anytime you find yourself in a situation where you don't know where you stand, ask. Basically, 2 things that I'm in closing. I'm working on currently a seller, a husband and a wife. Unfortunately, he's getting sick. And I helped him buy an investment property 3 years ago. We're bringing up that house to market. So when you hear someone getting sick, unfortunately, they need to be able to maximize the funds so the wife can be taken care of. Another house, former BNIer reached out to me and said, there's an estate, there's no money. The only piece of asset is a house with no utilities. If you can, no utilities, can you help me sell it so we could get this property taken care of and get the family some money? I tackle very difficult situations and I tackle very easy situations. No situation is, I get excited when I see a difficult situation. If you have any questions, just ask Jake.